Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video, a little bit sooner than hoped for, I'd like to discuss the massive court case which Prince Harry and Tom Watson launched against Murdoch's media empire related to the criminal theft of personal information about them, which has now concluded. Harry and Watson have settled out of court, which means they've won, but part of the deal meant an apology from the media group which owns the Sun. So what exactly have they admitted to? And is this as good as the court judgment that we were really hoping for? But first, for daily political commentary, please hit the subscribe button to stay notified. So first of all, when I discussed this issue a couple of days ago, because the court case was supposed to begin today, I explained how the legal system works to encourage out-of-court settlements. If a claimant wins a case but is awarded less in damages than the court that they were offered by, the accused, effectively, then they still have to pay the legal costs. So for high profile cases like this, those legal costs can run into many millions, which is why so many cases are settled out of court. Even if you win, you could still have to pay those legal costs, right? Legal processes like this are not designed to provide legal judgments. That is only a last resort. They exist to allow someone who's been illegally wronged to seek redress as quickly as possible, usually in the form of financial compensation and ideally without having to use up a load of valuable court time. In this case, Prince Harry also has a letter of apology. So quite often what you get in a case like this is you have a settlement and then there's an NDA and nothing is said about it, right? So we get an apology. We don't get our definitive court judgment, which was the ideal outcome for those of us pushing for press reform. But do the specific admissions of guilt provide a suitable consolation prize? Well, first thing to note, and I suppose the biggest part of this, is that part of the problem we had was News of the World, which was a Murdoch publication which is no longer around. Their staff some of their staff were found guilty of phone hacking a bit over a decade ago, which was why Murdoch shut the paper down. But the idea that phone hacking was more widespread and included people at the Sun was strongly denied and not at the time proven in court. So we go to the first paragraph of the apology to Harry, and I quote, "NGN offers a full and unequivocal apology to the Duke of Sussex for the serious intrusion by the Sun between 1996 and 2012, was it 2011, into his private life, including incidents of unlawful activities carried out by private investigators working for the Sun." So the apology doesn't just accept that the media group carried out illegal surveillance on Harry's private affairs, which we already had established in criminal prosecutions, but there is an admission that the illegal activity did involve the Sun newspaper. Now, the letter even admits to the use of phone hacking as well as other methods. Harry was not allowed to build phone hacking into his case because he'd been deemed to have taken too long. But the admission is in the letter anyway. Obviously, these letters are worked out via a process of negotiation between the two legal teams. The conceding side wants to say as little as possible in it. They ideally don't want to say anything at all. The winning side wants it to say as much as possible. What results is the least incriminating statement that the losing side thinks it can get away with and still avoid the court case. So the combination of this admission of illegal activity and including phone hacking taking part at the Sun, along with the reported £50 million payout, but it is certainly an 8-figure sum, would strongly indicate that the lawyers acting for Murdoch's NGN or News Group newspapers thought that they would have a very bad day in court if they didn't settle. Now, although everyone who manages to settle out of court claims that it's not an admission of guilt, this is not remotely credible here. The court date was almost here. There was not much more to be done or time to be taken to finish this. They were going to present arguments today in court. So to finish this, if NGN were going to be able to argue their defence, it's like it was almost over. That they have settled at a very, literally at the last minute, and for a massive amount of money for an individual, means that they were going to be found, to quote Blackadder, as guilty as a puppy sat next to a pile of poo. So in that sense, it should be as good as a court judgment, finding the news group guilty. If this had been a criminal case, what NGN done is basically entered a guilty plea. However, because it's a settlement out of court, which happens all the time, and not a formal court verdict, might not be as spicy for the newsreels. Now, it is the top story on the BBC News this afternoon and other broadcast news websites. As for the Tory press, interesting. The Times, when I looked at any rate, had no mention on their news homepage. Not at all. Now, they will have an article, of course they will, but they don't seem to want to shine a spotlight on it. Murdoch owns the Times, of course, like half the bloody newspapers in the country. The Telegraph, which is owned by a different carbuncle on the scrot of humanity, does have the story on their news homepage, but it just reads, Prince Harry ends legal action against the Sun publisher as settlement agreed. No great fanfare, doesn't even say who won. The Daily Mail and Daily Express have the story featured on their homepages, but it's not the top story in either case. You've got to scroll down. So yeah, the Tory client press, whether Murdoch owned or not particularly interested in bringing this to special public attention. So it will be interesting to see if the broadcast giants decide to make a meal of it or not. Like I said on Monday, they may resent the fact that they have to follow rules, which the press, who are their competitors, at least in the online space, don't at all. In terms of what happens now, well, the group have admitted that the Sun engaged in the same illegal act which attracted convictions for several people over a decade ago and forced the closure of the News of the World. Although the closure was a way of trying to avoid further investigations. It wasn't like literally forced to close. This admission doesn't, of course, admit to the personal guilt of any named individuals. But the obvious conclusion to draw is that if the Sun has carried out this illegal activity, individual people must have done. So some people who were acquitted or never prosecuted in the original trials are actually guilty of criminal acts. They must be, because nobody from the Sun was convicted as far as I can tell, yet the owners of the Sun have admitted to carrying out illegal surveillance. So of course there could well be calls for the police to reopen investigations based on the admission, as well as the one related to Tom Watson, which I'll go through at the end. Now, I'm not sure they will. But then there's the biggest prize, press reform. The phone hacking and other forms of illegal surveillance were not an isolated affair. It was widespread. Indeed, NGN have admitted it was more widespread than initially proven. And because they denied illegality at the Sun for many years, they've also admitted that they covered up crimes in those intervening years. Whatever happens in terms of resurrecting police investigations, which I'm not hopeful about, shouldn't there at least be an inquiry into press standards and how to properly enforce them? Because right now, there are a few rules which the press are supposed to abide by, but they regulate themselves. You know, this isn't really acceptable. NGN claim that they have much improved systems in place to make sure it can't happen again. Are we really going to take their word for it? After all, their settlement statement admits that they have been lying to the public and the authorities for over a decade now about activities at the Sun. Right up until today, they were denying that the Sun broke the law in obtaining information about the people they were writing about. Well, given that they've stumped up, £50 million for Harry alone, but paid out billions. Sorry, £1 billion, not billions. Let's not get excited. But still, £1 billion in settlements to lots of people. Not all of them related to the Sun specifically, but related to the Murdoch stable of papers. That suggests that NGN were not confident of winning those court cases. Like, nobody pays out £1 billion because they can't be asked explaining themselves to a bloke in a white wig. This is a classic case of where there is widespread abuse in a sector, the government should hold an inquiry and tighten up regulations. Regulations which are almost completely non-existent right now. Because it's not just Harry who has an apology. Labour's Tom Watson now. Back during the original scandal, they destroyed thousands of files of evidence and justified it by saying that they felt that they were having their emails effectively stolen by the government, which was led by Gordon Brown at the time. They were saying that the government were effectively spying on them. Now, obviously, this was bollocks. They were about to face criminal investigations and they wanted to destroy as much evidence as they could. Tom Watson was targeted by them because he was one of Gordon Brown's ministers and he was accused of being the one taking receipt of these stolen emails. The end of NGN's statement accepts that their claims that Watson had been receiving stolen News International documents, which was their basis for destroying them all, was false. So they've said now, they've admitted that the basis for this was false. they've admitted that their stated reason for destroying material evidence during a criminal investigation was not valid. There are just so many things here which both the police and the government should be reacting to. But at the very least, the government, because there's nothing to stop this happening again. NGNs say that they have systems in place to stop it. Bollocks. I want legislated systems in place. I want the government to put systems in place, not the people who illegally spied on people's private affairs, destroyed loads of evidence when they were being investigated by the police, and are now asking us to trust them that they've learned their lesson. What sort of mug trusts someone like that? But there we are. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. If you've enjoyed the video, please click the like button and subscribe for further content. If you'd like to support the channel further, you can click the join button for memberships. Thanks for listening. Until next time, I'll see you later.